All right, what's going on, guys? So in this video, we're going to talk about the best training frequency for naturals. So let's get right into it. And first thing I'm going to say is one of the main reasons why people don't make gains and, why people get a lack of results is actually doing too much, believe it or not. So there's been this this way of thinking that, when it comes to fitness, you need to do as much as you can in order to see proper results. And that's just not true. So I have a more minimalist approach to fitness. I have a more, less is more type of approach. And the reality is, guys, people are training way too much, especially people who are natural. So if you are natural, guys, strength and muscle are inseparable. They're very tightly correlated. And training on conventional routines makes it very hard to get strong and make strength gains, because the bodybuilding routines, all the routines that people are taking, because there are very few naturals left actually out there, and the way they train is just they're just pumping reps after reps, very high volume routines. They're following very conventional routines that have been used for quite some time. But if you look back in the day, how the classic golden era bodybuilders trained, when they weren't taking as many drugs. They were still taking drugs, of course, because bodybuilders, they take drugs. But when they weren't taking quite as many drugs, you could see that their training routines were very, very drastically different. So basically, they would train, maybe just 3 days a week. And this is how they would train, because they understood that, and they used very heavy barbell training too. So they trained properly. They used very heavy barbell training, big multi-joint movements, and they focused on getting strong. They did, full body routines 3 days a week. And so that, if we look back at that time, guys, that's when the physiques were actually the best, and that's where everyone was the strongest. Nowadays, guys, people are blasting fuckloads of gear. So it really doesn't matter. Like, you could literally not train and gain a lot of muscle, drastic amounts of muscle on gear. So it really doesn't matter what you do. But when you're a natural lifter, guys, the variables become a lot tighter. So you really need to watch out for your recovery. So from my experience, training on conventional routines, the bro splits, training 5-6 days a week, it really does not work, guys. So it drastically increases your chances of overtraining. It increases the demands on your recovery abilities way too much, way more than a natural lifter could handle. And essentially, it waters down your enthusiasm for training. And that is a very important point to bring up, because essentially, guys, if you want to be consistent over the long term and you want to string together progressive workouts over the long term and you want to stay consistent, which is obviously the biggest key, it's going to be impossible to do that if you're training every day, guys, because you're going to be dragging yourself through those workouts. So when I train, I train 2-3 days a week. My enthusiasm for training is there. When I train, I really want to train. I look forward to those workouts. I'm someone who loves to train. I fucking love training. But even myself, I couldn't see myself training 5-6 days a week. I would be exhausted. My body would be, I would have way too many overuse issues. I just wouldn't be getting strong. And part of the enjoyment of training, guys, is yes, like being in the gym training, but it's also getting results. And when someone asks me, like, can I train every day? I'm like, do you want to be small, or do you want to train every day? Or sorry, no. Do you want to train every day, or do you want to get results? That's essentially what I ask them, and that's just the reality, guys. And unless you want to take steroids, unless you want to blast a bunch of gear, it's going to be impossible for you to make proper gains, because the primary driver of muscle growth, guys, is progressive poundage over time, progressive workload. Getting stronger over time on your big multi-joint movements, that's what's going to drive 90% of your growth, as your muscle growth as a natural lifter. So that is just, it's not going to happen on conventional routines, guys. So when you're a natural, you have to take things differently. And that's how I started my training. I started training on conventional routines, and I couldn't see myself sticking to it. I just could not. My body was exhausted. I was always getting overuse issues. It was a shit show, guys. So if you're following one of those conventional routines and you're a natural lifter, you're making a fraction of the progress that you could be making. So that's where we're really going to get into the best training frequency. So the next point I want to bring up is that when you're natural, you have to remember that recovery is always number one. It's always the most important factor. So one thing that nobody kind of follows nowadays is the idea, and this is very much the case for natural lifters, guys. It's always going to be effort over quantity. Always. When you're a natural lifter, it's always going to be intensity over volume. So reality is, if you're training hard, and if you're training the right way for a natural, which is, the effort over the quantity, which means that you put everything into your sets. You don't have any junk volume. The sets that you do, you make them count. That's what effort over quantity means. It means that you're not always in the gym, but when you're in the gym, you make shit happen. You push for that progression, that personal record, right? And that's how you build a body naturally. So generally speaking, guys, the upper limit of training frequency, and I don't really believe in conventional body part splits. The way I do it, and this is the way I found it to be most effective out of all my experience, is basically focusing more on the lifts that you're doing. So splitting your training sessions into your key movements, into your big multi-joint movements. Instead of focusing on a body part split, I recommend, this is the way I do it. I take my 5 to 6 or 4 to 6 key movements. I'll link the video where I talk about minimalist training and how you should pick 4 to 6 movements and prioritize them and get as strong as possible on them and kind of master them. So I pick 4 to 6 movements and I kind of find which ones. So I've done that for myself. I found which movements work well together, and then I split those into my workout. So I don't do those conventional splits. I find it works better to split your training sessions into your big lifts. So, but generally speaking, guys, if you're training properly, you can only really train each of your big lifts once per week. That, from my experience, that's been the upper limit. If you're really bringing it, you're really pushing those sets close to failure, then you're not really gonna be able to train each lift more than once per week. That is the upper limit, and that's assuming that you're probably in a caloric surplus, or just getting enough food. But if you're in a calorie deficit, guys, that's when things change even more. So, typically when I'm bulking, I will train 3 days per week. I'll train 3 days per week, sometimes 4 if my recovery is really good, if I'm getting proper sleep, I'm really eating in a proper surplus. But generally speaking, it's just going to be 3 days per week, and it's going to be split into basically hitting my big lifts one time per week. So, Monday I'll do, squats. That'll be my squat day. That's my main focus for that day. And Wednesday, bench. And then Friday would be deadlifts. And then I'll have a second key movement in each of those routines. But that's really my focus, right? So you're really not going to be able to train, squats and deadlifts if you're training them close to failure, you're not going to be able to train them more than once, especially deadlifts, guys. There's no fucking way. If you want to train squats a second day per week, you can add in a lighter day just for working on the mobility aspect, getting the form dialed in, getting a little bit extra volume can help with soreness. But something like deadlifts, guys, you can only train that once per week. If you're training it hard, there's absolutely no fucking way. I've never seen any benefit going above training deadlifts once per week. So, and when you're in a calorie deficit, guys, or your recovery's tighter, and the thing is training frequency is very, very individual. It's very individual. It's all about your recovery abilities and your lifestyle. So, someone like me who gets proper sleep, now it's summertime, so, I don't have school. I could sleep, I have access to proper nutrition. I could probably train more than that of the average, 9 to 5 goer who has a family. You understand? So basically it's all about the recovery ability. So if you work a laborious job, you're obviously not going to be able to train as much as me or as hard as me. So you really want to train within your recovery abilities. So, sometimes when my recovery ability is, lessened, probably because I'm cutting in a calorie deficit, I'll train, let's say, my squats and my deadlifts I'll put my routine in an 8 to 10 day cycle. So I'll train my squats and deadlifts every 8 to 10 days. So that means basically having a training session every 4 to 5 days. So that usually works out to around 2 sessions a week. And people are going to think that's very low volume, but the reality is, guys, if you're really bringing it, training twice a week can bring you incredible results. So typically I'll train twice a week. When my calories are a little bit higher, my recovery ability is better, I'll train 3 days a week. If I really have that excess of calories, then I'll train maybe 4 days a week. But the reality is, I'm training within my recovery ability for that time. You don't want to train more than you can recover from, because you're not going to be making gains. All that extra volume that you're doing is not going to be, it's not going to turn into extra muscle growth and strength gains. It's just going to cause overuse issues. It's just going to fucking sap you. All right, so basically, guys, the real answer is you want to train based on your ability to produce effective workouts. So whatever that is for you, maybe that's, a Monday, Thursday schedule, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Maybe even it's a Monday, Thursday, Wednesday, Monday, when you're training less frequently for better recovery because you don't have as much recovery ability at that time in your life, then that's completely fine. So the real answer, guys, is there's no set frequency. It's based on your ability to effective effective workouts. So if that's 3 days a week for you, then fucking fantastic. If it's 2 days, great. As long as you are stringing together effective workouts, you're producing, progressive poundage on all your lifts, then you're going to be growing. It doesn't really matter how often you are training. A lot of studies are now coming out that training frequency for a muscle, people always thought, to get the best strength, to get the best muscle gains, you need to train a muscle twice a week, 20 sets per muscle. And it's bullshit, guys. It's bullshit. A lot of the studies are coming out saying that the frequency doesn't matter if the volume is matched. But honestly, guys, fuck volume. Fuck volume. As long as you're getting strong, you're going to be seeing those gains. So remember, it's always intensity over volume for the natural lifter. If you're putting that fucking hard work into your lifts, you're getting strong over time, you're going to be seeing the strength gains and the muscle gains that you want. So a lot of my workouts are like 8 to 10 total sets, a lot of them. So, if I'm training just twice a week, then probably it's going to be closer to, 12 to 15 sets. But, I rarely go over, especially when my calories are lower, like on a deficit, or if I'm eating at maintenance, I'll rarely go over, 30 total work sets per week. Maybe I'll go up to like 40, 45 when I'm bulking. But, the volume game is not the game for the natural lifter, guys. It's all about the intensity. It's all about the effort that you put into your sets. Anything that dilutes the effort that you put into each set is bullshit, and you're wasting your time. So train based on your ability to produce effective workouts, and always, when in doubt, rest more. So, a couple days ago, first session this week I took was on Tuesday. And, I was trying to hit a deadlift session on Saturday, and I still wasn't recovered. So, I was warming up. And this is also something that's really important. You guys have to learn how to err on the side of conservatism. So I was warming up, and, that first warm-up set, it felt a little weird. It felt a little shitty. It was moving fast. And then, I took a couple more warm-up sets, and, by the time I got to 80% of my top set, of my working set, I couldn't even move the bar. I couldn't even get it off the floor. And so I didn't try to string myself through that workout, because I wasn't recovered. I said, fuck it. I left, and now I'm going to come back. I'm actually going to train today, which is, which is 2 days later. I took 2 full rest days, and now I'm going to hit that fucking PRs. But if I had strung myself through that workout, I could have injured myself. I wouldn't have made any progress from the last one. I would have actually lost strength. So it's really important to learn when to step back. So that is super important. Always learn how to err on the side of conservatism. So that's really it for this video, guys. I hope you guys found this useful. This is really what it takes to, build muscles at natural. The training frequency thing is very individual. It's really based on your ability to produce effective workouts, to string together progressive workouts over time. So if you guys aren't seeing that strength gain on your big lifts, you're not going to be seeing the muscle growth that you want. And it's not about the volume, it's about that intensity. It's about reaching those personal records and getting strong over time. So if you guys enjoyed this video, drop a like, subscribe. Check me out on Instagram. I'll leave the link below, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.